Hi guys, Patrick from Santa Barbara English. Okay, so I made a short video explaining this gap that Japanese have with their English, and a lot of people have. And I have a series of lessons that focuses on fixing this gap, and I broke it into 5 areas: communication, culture, listening, daily life English, and missing vocabulary. And today's video is about communication, okay? When I say communication, I'm talking about something that's a little bit unique that you probably haven't studied before. Okay, so let's go through it. I will try to speak slowly. I do get excited and I am hungover, but here we go. Okay, so communication is more than just vocabulary and grammar. Let's take a look at these two first. So the vocabulary are the words that you learn in the language, the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives. You know, dog, table, cat, jump, chair, pen, to go, to run, to swim. Okay, vocabulary. And the grammar, something else that you learn in school, the sentences. So in English, we use an SVO format. It's subject, verb, object. Okay, I like rice. Dare, doshi, nani, mitai. Okay, so some short sentences. I have a pencil. She went to Tokyo. We are American. It is hot. Okay, now generally when you're talking in English, you use this SVO and you just loop it. Okay, I like dogs, but my apartment is small, so I don't have a dog. Okay, now today we're going to look at some other things other than vocabulary and grammar, okay? Because vocabulary and grammar, this is what Japanese people study in English, and it's important, but it's not enough. So, natural communication uses a list of things. So, of course, you have vocabulary, of course, you have grammar. The first concept that I'm going to introduce are phrases. Now, phrases are unique for several reasons. First of all, a phrase is something that is usually a few words, not a full sentence. It's not subject, verb, object. There's usually no verb, but it's not just a word like table. Okay, it's not just a thing. So let me give you some examples. The first example I like is not really. Very convenient phrase. Uh, in Japanese, we say ammari or sonnani. It's exactly the same. You can say not really as a response. So if somebody says, Patrick, do you like sports? Not really. Or I can use it in a sentence. I don't really like sports. Okay? Now, I hope you noticed something. When I say ammari or sonnani, or when I say not really, there's a bit of an intonation to it. There's a way that I'm saying it. I don't just say, "Do you like sports?" Not really. I say, "Not really." Okay? Suddenly there's this like reaction, my face, my eyes, my intonation, all of that. Phrases are unique because you don't do that with vocabulary. I don't say like coffee, coffee, I don't have different ways to say coffee. But most of the phrases have this package of intonation and a gesture and all of these things that we're going to study. Okay? So not really. Also, phrases are sometimes hard to learn by yourself because not really is not in my dictionary. Like I don't, is that under not? Is it under really? It's kind of hard to find in the dictionary. Okay? Okay. Another example of a phrase, good for you. So I put this one in here because sometimes when people do learn phrases, like in a textbook, they'll learn something like congratulations, omedetou gozaimasu. But omedetou gozaimasu or congratulations is not really a daily life phrase. I don't say that every day. That's when somebody has a baby or gets married or gets a new job or something. But if I say, "Oh, I got a new pen," "Oh, omedetou gozaimasu," that's very strange. So there's a lot of short phrases that you use much more often than what your textbook has. Like, I met a nice girl today. Oh, good for you. Like, ii ne, mitai. You know, my Japanese textbook, chapter 1, has omedetou gozaimasu, but it doesn't have ii ne. Kido, ii ne is much more common and useful than omedetou gozaimasu. Okay? So, some of the phrases that people learn in English, they're not daily life phrases. There's a lot of smaller ones that you should be learning. Okay. Third Third phrase, all right. You probably know this phrase. The reason that I put it on, so all right means okay. the reason that I put this on is because it's important to have different ways of saying the same thing. Okay? Sometimes when Japanese are speaking English, they will be like, huh, okay, 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 bye. That's not natural. Like we never repeat the same thing 5 times. Normally, I would say, uh-huh, right, okay, sure, yeah, okay, yeah, right, okay, bye. And I cycle, right? It's the same in Japanese. Nobody says, majide, 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 majide. They'll say, majide, uso, honto, shiranakatta. And you'll cycle through these things, okay? I don't know which is more important, hontoni or majide, because you need all of them. And again, this is unique with phrases because when you learn a word for coffee, that's it. You don't learn how to say coffee 5 different ways. Or dog. Dog is dog. You're done. But phrases, they have an intonation, they have a way of saying them. It's not a full sentence. It's hard to find in the dictionary. And sometimes you use several of them for the same meaning. Okay? Let me give you an example for Japanese. No, sorry, one more English one. Go ahead. Okay? So go ahead is like dozo in Japanese. Like if I'm walking with my friend and we get to the door at the same time and it's like "なんかちょっと邪魔," I say dozo みたい. In English, get to the door. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Okay. If you ask me, お手洗い使っていいですか? はい、どうぞ. Can I use your bathroom? Yeah, go ahead. I'm hoping you can see the difference here. When I say dozo, I'm using the Japanese gesture like this and my head goes down and I'll, これいいですか? はい、どうぞどうぞみたい. You have this way of saying dozo, right? You don't just say 使っていいですか? はい、どうぞ. Like there's a certain way to say it. Phrases in English are the same, but it's a unique way. It's an American way. For example, I'll use, like this or my face or whatever. When you're learning phrases in another language, don't use your character, your manners, your gesture in Japanese and say it there. It's very strange to say, "Can I use your bathroom?" "Oh, yes, go ahead." But many Japanese people do that. Their communication style is Japanese. When you are learning natural communication and you learn the vocabulary and the grammar, you also need to learn not just what you're saying, these phrases, but how you're saying it, when you're saying it. And for many of them, how you say it is more important than what you're saying. どうやって言うは何を言うより大事. Okay? That's a unique idea that doesn't happen with vocabulary or grammar. Okay? Let me give you some examples the other way, and you can see what I mean. So, ma, I would say, is a Japanese phrase. I don't know what that is. Is that a word? Is that a keiyoshi, meishi, doshi, nani sore? Ne? If I look in my dictionary, there's no ma. But I use this every single day. You use, I'm sure, ma, every single conversation. And it's not like dog, where dog means dog. Ma has a variety of meanings. You can say like ma, or you can be like ma ne. You can use it when you're going to agree with somebody. You can use it when you're going to disagree with somebody. You can use it to show that you don't know, right? So I'm sure you know ma, めっちゃ便利, めっちゃ便利でしょ? けど, how do you say ma in English? You probably don't know. Okay? Now, in this video, I'm just explaining the concepts of communication. I'm not going to tell you 1,000 phrases, but when I say phrases, I'm talking about things like ma. If you imagine how convenient ma is in English, in Japanese, and then you don't know how to say that in English, you're going to be missing this communication style. Okay, you're going to be missing something important. Another Japanese phrase, itadakimasu. Itadakimasu mitai. And I put that on here because we don't have this in English. We have grace. You might say a prayer before you eat, but it's not the same thing. There are phrases in Japanese that don't exist in English. Okay? There are phrases in English that don't exist in Japanese. So I studied Japanese for a few years before I went to Japan, and my Japanese was pretty good, but I didn't know irasamase because I never saw that in Santa Barbara. I never practiced that in California. There are probably many phrases in English that we have here that you've never thought about or heard or said because you just don't experience that in Japan. Okay, so phrases. Something that is really unique and has a lot of feeling and you use every single day. Okay? あんまりいいね、大丈夫とか、どうぞ。まあ、all of those are super, super, super common every day, every conversation probably in Japanese. Same in English. Okay? Later, I'm going to go through communication lessons and I will teach you phrases and things. Okay, so noises. Noises. All right, let me show you one. This is the most common word in English. In Japanese, you say okay? So how many times a day do you say like 1,000 times? Ne? 多分 1,000 times. In English, I say 1,000 times. Very, very, very common. For some reason, even in my high level classes, when I go back to Japan, people don't say they use very high vocabulary, high grammar, high TOEIC score. And I say, did you work today? You have to make American noises also, or English noises. You can't use Japanese noises in English. It's very strange. So, simple. Another noise, like, okay, is something that how you change the intonation can change the meaning, right? You can be like a naruhodo, like a, I see. Or you can be like disappointed, like, or you can be like, I don't believe you, like, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can use these noises. Think about something like in Japanese, like you would say like, he, mitai, okay? And noises are unique also because they're not in textbooks. I don't know how to look up he, but how you say it is very, very, very important. Okay. Also, mouth, hand noises. You might notice that I use my hands a lot. I make just a lot more noises. I don't do that so much in Japanese, but in English it's part of my communication style. Okay? Next concept. Gestures. As I'm sure you're noticing, I use my hands a lot. So gestures are communicating with your hands. Okay? There's a lot of gestures in Japanese like this or we just don't have in English, or we do it in a very, very different way. And you don't want to be saying like dozo with, sorry, go ahead. You don't want to be using the Japanese gestures with English. And I hope you start to notice that the phrases and the noises and the gestures and the intonation and the things that I'm talking about now, they often go together like a package, right? A sentence you can say, it's a little bit cold today, right? But a lot of the other types of communication, noises and gestures and phrases, you'll put together like some, right? Like you don't just say samui as a word. You say some, like as this feeling. Okay. Body language. Okay. Body language is how you communicate with your body, not just your hands, but with your body. We move differently. We sit differently. Okay. There's a lot of communication. Think about this. In Japan, we bow, right? There are a lot of different bows depending on if you're saying like I'm sorry, or if I'm saying thank you, or if it's to my boss in the company, or if you're in like a, I don't know, like a group or a club or something. Arigatou gozaimashita. So you can have like a arigatou gozaimashita, なんかほんとすみませんでしたとか. You can have this like a little bit more of an obachan, like はい、ありがとうございましたみたい. There's lots of different bows, and they're all important, right? If you said, my friend is learning Japanese, but he doesn't know how to bow, he's missing something. That's really important. You can't learn verbs or adjectives that's the same as bowing. Bowing is bowing, and you can't take it out of the language. Okay? In English, we have body language also that is just as important. And actually, we have a lot of body language. We use our bodies and our gestures and our hands and faces a lot more than in Japanese. And they're super important, like bowing. Think about this, like if you're at a nomikai, right? Let's say there's a girl and a boy, and she likes this boy. She's not going to say, I like you. You know, she won't tell him that. But she'll communicate it maybe with, she'll laugh a little bit more, or the way that she's touching her neck or her hair. She'll sort of hint that I like you, right? And then the boy probably doesn't understand because boys are stupid, but I mean, that's a totally different textbook. But my point is, you can communicate things with your body language and the way you're sitting and moving and bowing and all of those things that you have to learn in another culture if you want to communicate. You can't just put that in a sentence, right? Okay, yeah, body language, the show. Intonation. So I was mentioning when you say the phrases, there's an intonation, right? Like, not really. Now, intonation is really important for a few different reasons. So, first of all, if you look in a textbook sometimes, they will say, like, they will have a list of vocabulary, like maybe, probably, likely, probably not. And then they will show you, like, okay, maybe is a 50% chance, and probably is a 75% chance, and probably not is a 20. Yeah, that's okay, but if you think about intonation, you actually have a much more control. You can talk like 23.5% chance, right? Because honestly, they say maybe, or like tabun is maybe. Tabun maybe equals 50% chance. Really? Because listen, if I said, ano hito kuru, tabun kuru. Ano hito kuru, tabun. The exact same word, I can jump 80%, 50%. It tabun kuru kido, you can drop or raise this percentage of chance with the exact same word depending on how you say it by changing your intonation, right? And you naturally do that in Japanese. You can say like, ah, sugoi, suge, like sugoi, like the ways that you say sugoi can communicate so many things. And they use intonation. People use intonation when they speak Japanese, but when they switch to English, they usually don't. So because they don't have that nice control, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60%, they just learn more and more and more and more and more vocabulary. And they want to learn some of these really strange words that I don't use in my daily life because they're trying to think of this word means this word means this word means this. It's not very natural. That's not how you do it in Japanese. It's not how we do it in English. Um, Intonation is important, and it's also something you can't write down, and it's something that has to be perfect, right? If I said hey, like in Japanese, like hey, like I'm surprised. If I change that a little bit, it has no meaning. So hey, nice eye. You have to say like hey, or uh like hmm. So it's not just what you need to say, it's how you need to say it. But the problem is how you say it, you can't write down, right? I mean, if I just posted all of these phrases and noises and I just wrote hey or whoa, I can type whoa, but you have to really learn how to say like whoa, whoa, like I'm sad, whoa, and I'm surprised, whoa, and that's amazing, whoa, like you would do with your sugois, right? So intonation is really important, and it's very convenient. Okay, slow down. I'm talking really fast. Get excited. Okay. What's next? Facial expression. Okay. So you've probably noticed I'm using my face a lot. We communicate a lot with our face in English. Japanese people don't use their face as much. They do, of course, but it's a little different. They'll use more kind of the shoulders and the head, and it's people are a little bit more reserved, a little bit more. They keep their feelings inside. Facial expression I use a lot in English, and sometimes if I'm telling a story or if I'm talking to my friends, I notice the Japanese friends, they're not really looking at my face, and I feel like they're missing a lot of the communication because I'm putting communication into my face, right? Um, there is no word as important as like a smile, like like that's just not vocabulary, but it's super important, right? So how you express your emotions, it's amazing when people will study another language and they do so much time with vocabulary and grammar, but they never think, how can I show I'm happy? How can I show I'm confused? How can I show I'm sad? In Japanese, they do this. They have like this, I don't really understand what the heck's going on here. What is this? But then in English, they don't have it. And they'll just use their Japanese. Number five. They'll just use their Japanese communication. But it doesn't really make sense because that's not how we do it. Okay? So facial expression. Head angle. This is something that a lot of Asians do. Japanese especially communicate a lot with their head. Okay? So when they'll say like or the angle of their head shows like I'm confused or I disagree or there's a lot of communication in it, but we don't really understand it in English. I understand it, of course, I speak Japanese, but I'll notice sometimes if I'm in a mixed group, right, and I'll have like the girl here, and I'll say Hiroko-san, あの人かっこいいと思う, and she'll look, 誰? 彼? And she'll move her head like 1 centimeter, and all of the Japanese laugh because they understand like mitai. But the gaijin don't laugh because they didn't catch like why are we laughing? Because it's so small. You guys communicate a lot of things in a very small mitai, and there's a difference between this and this and this and this that gaijin do not understand. It's not our culture. And if you're trying to express and communicate in English, but you're using こういう日本のスタイル、誰もわからへん. Okay? You have to learn it here, right? And then when you're talking, suddenly you can express yourself much better and you can communicate much better, okay? So again, don't use the Japanese head angle, face, tone, body, all of that when you're speaking English. It's just strange. Eye contact. Okay, I say eye contact, but what I mean is communicating with your eyes. Our eyes are very expressive. We express a lot with our eyes, okay? If a girl is mad, and like an American girl is mad, I can usually see it in her eyes. There's a lot coming out of there, okay? Think like, think about like that. I never do that in Japanese. It's quite strange. But in America, like even if I make a joke or something, I'm talking to my friend about, like winking communicates so much. Your eyes, your eyebrows, you can communicate so much with your face and with your eyes. And again, a lot of Japanese, they're not looking at my eyes when we talk, or they're not looking at my face, or if they are, it's kind of like they're focusing more like here, not here. So try to make eye contact more, but also try to express yourself through your eyes, because there's things that you can do that there's no vocabulary for. I mean, where is this in the dictionary, right? Whereas if you see a cute boy and you kind of look down or look, there's no way to do that with keiyoshi, fukushi, meishi, mitai. Okay? So eyes are important. Automatic speech. Okay. Automatic speech is when you're talking to somebody, and for a second you have to think, or you make a mistake, and then you talk to yourself, and then you keep talking to the person. Okay, so let me give you an example in Japanese. So if I said, 昨日なんか町の中心に行ったね。なんていう伝えに行った。Okay, なんていうなんていう is talking to myself. I'm not asking you なんていう I'm asking me. 何買った何買った I'm talking to myself. 誰だっけ何だっけ These type of automatic speeches where you're saying something and you say コーヒーじゃなくてお茶買ったじゃなくて Okay? I'm not telling you じゃなくて I'm saying ちゃうじゃなくて It's important to do those in another language. Sometimes when Japanese are speaking, they'll speak Japanese sentences, and then, they'll speak in an English sentence, Japanese automatic speech, English sentence, Japanese automatic speech, and it's very strange. Yesterday I went down to the a coffee shop, and I bought coffee and a tea, and they're like jumping between the two. So it's important to do the whole communication in English. So you're saying the English sentence, and hopefully you're using English intonation, and hopefully you're using, I went to the what's it called, the coffee shop yesterday, and I bought a tea, not tea, coffee. Okay, I'm showing that I'm exaggerating, but you want to be talking with all of these things together. Okay, so vocabulary and grammar are important, but there's a lot of things that you cannot communicate with just words or sentences, that you need phrases, you need tones, you need face, you need your hands, okay? Now, when Japanese people speak English, I'm sorry, when Japanese people speak Japanese, they use all of these, okay? So here on this page, I'll show you, Japanese uses vocabulary, grammar, phrases, all of them. And in English, we use vocabulary, grammar, phrase, all of them, okay? When Japanese speak Japanese, it's very natural. If I go to a cafe and I look at two people talking, they'll say, daisuke shiteru? Shiteru. Nanka, kanojo shiteru? Kanojo ga shiranakatta. And they'll be, all of these things, the way they're leaning forward, the way they're leaning back, and I'm surprised, and I'm this, and all of this communication, very natural. It's great, right? And then they study English, and they study vocabulary and grammar. And they try to push all of this natural, beautiful communication style in Japanese into vocabulary and grammar. And it doesn't work. They'll have a sentence like, bikuri shita. How do you say that in English? I am surprised. No, kawaii-san. Nande, when you said bikuri shita, you had the feeling and you had the emotion and intonation and all of this. But then in English, I am surprised. And suddenly, you can't express what you want to say. You can't communicate what you want to say because it's basically a robot just to say vocabulary and grammar, vocabulary and grammar. Okay? So when I say communication and I'm talking about this gap that you need to study, you have to learn some phrases. You have to learn tango to bunpo igai, other than vocabulary and grammar. You have to learn the phrases, the noises, the gestures, the body language, the intonation, everything that I'm talking about. Good news, okay? Good news. This is really fun. Honestly, it's fun to learn the noises and to communicate and express yourself, because what you're doing, and I'll talk about this more in the culture video, but you're making a second character, okay? How you show something and how you say something in Japanese is going to be different than how you show it and how you say it in English, okay? Of course it is. It's a different language. It's a different word. We're not even thinking in the same order, right? We don't even have the same opinions. I mean, if you ask me the question in English, I'll tell you this answer, and if you ask me the question in Japanese, I'll tell you a different answer. I mean, I don't have the same way of thinking of expressing, right? So you get to make a second character when you learn another language. And every language you learn, you need to do this for, okay? You need to turn this or this into, the way that they do it in that language. So the good news is this is fun. The second good news is it's a lot easier. If you've learned the vocabulary and the grammar, which you probably have if you can understand my English right now, that's the hard part. Eat, ate, eaten, I have, I had, I would have had. Like, that's the boring part. It's not very fun to learn, all of these verbs and all of these words. You just have to memorize them. It's like learning kanji, right? You just have to memorize it. But these things are pretty fun. I like learning phrases. I like teaching phrases. So in the future, I'm going to be releasing the lessons, and I'm going to say, okay, this is a communication lesson. It's on greetings, okay? And I'm going to talk about when you say this, how you say this, how you react to this. And I'm going to, when I teach phrases, I don't just say this is the phrase, because I could put that online. Oh, here's a list of phrases. Kedo imi nai. You need to learn how you say it and when you say it. Because think about this. Like, when you learn bikurishita, when you say bikurishita in Japanese, there's a way to say bikurishita. You don't just say, bikurishita. Metta bikurishita. You have to say, bikurishita. Bikuri. There's a way to say it, right? You can't just email me, oh, Patrick, you are learning Japanese. Please learn this word, bikurishita. Okay. 明日からビクリした、ビクリした、ビクリ、ビクリばかり。意味ない。 you have to show me how to use it and teach me how to use it. So the good news is these are more fun and they're pretty easy. But the bad news is it's hard to learn on your own because I can't just email everybody. I can't just, if I put this whole textbook online, it won't really help you. It's good for teachers because they can go through and show it. So if you have gaijin friends, if you're taking English classes in Japan, or if you're, cafe lessons or eikaiwa, start to do this now. Just pay attention when your teachers or your friends are talking and start to copy them. Start to make a second character, okay? Or ask them, say, hey, can we do some phrases? Or when you ask a question and he said, no idea, just say, can you do that again? When you said, no idea, like, what was this noise here? What was this gesture? What is that phrase? And put it together because you have to use all of these things in a package at one time, okay? Almost done. If you don't learn these things, you're going to really struggle to communicate in English because if you think about communication, a lot of it is not vocabulary and grammar. And let me give you this one example. So imagine that there's a boy and a girl, man and a woman in a company, and next week is a Hanami party, right? The cherry blossom Hanami, I don't know, Hanami party. Cherry, Hanami party, whatever, I don't know the English. And she says, なんか来週来るでしょ? And he says, まあ、多分来ない。来ると思ってた。まあ、行きたいけど、もう最近仕事めっちゃ忙しいから多分行かない。Now, if we translate that, are you coming to the party? I don't think so. Oh, I thought you were coming. Sorry, work is very busy, so I can't. Oh, right? That's just the base of it. But really, the feeling that we can feel in that conversation, I hope if my Japanese was good, that she wanted him to go, and she's disappointed, and he's sorry, apologizing like it's not his fault, it's just work, and then she's like, oh, so the disappointment and the sadness and the hope and the apology, all of that is not in the vocabulary and the grammar, okay? And if you don't learn that, and you don't learn how to put disappointment in your voice and in your face and in your eyes, when you're speaking in English, you're going to just feel so limited, right? Because it's the same in Japanese. If I said, okay, please speak Japanese, but don't use don't use any of these intonations. Just use vocabulary and grammar. 無理. I can't even think. I can't even talk to myself in Japanese without them, right? I can't talk to myself in English or other languages without them. So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about communication. Final thoughts. I don't have any final thoughts. Okay, how did I do? Let me see. 33 minutes. Shit. Sorry. All right, a little bit more than 30 minutes, but shit. How do you say that in Japanese? Okay. Thanks for watching. I will make, before I start doing my communication lessons, next I'm going to explain culture because again, that's a unique concept. When I start talking about culture, it's going to probably be a new idea for you. I hope this communication is new for you. Missing vocabulary. Each of these sections of the book are my unique idea. All right, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.